As winter sets in, both sides retrench. The British occupy more of New Jersey by spreading smaller units throughout the territory. Washington, meanwhile, escapes into Pennsylvania, where he hopes to prevent an attack on Philadelphia, the seat of Congress. Mid-December 1776. The mood of despair has crept into his own soldiers as well. Many simply decide it is time to go home. Faith in the revolution is falling as fast as the temperature.
It's been a wretched year for them. Conditions have been harsh. Smallpox has broken out in the army. That's in addition to the other camp diseases that ravage the army at regular intervals. Militarily, things have been disastrous. There's not a lot of incentive for them to stay.
One man watches in horror. Thomas Paine had joined Washington's army as one of the Revolution's first war correspondents. Now, the young author of Common Sense, who helped spark independence only a year earlier, knows he must once again take up his pen. This time, he will not aim his words at the enemy, but directly at the hearts of American patriots.
These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of his country. Thomas Paine.
With a sense that the war rides as much on his words as on the musket ball, Paine rushes to Philadelphia to print his new manifesto. There, Paine finds his hometown in chaos. Fear and rumor are spreading like a virus. Citizens are convinced that Washington's forces won't be able to defend Philadelphia. In response, people flee. A steady stream of Philadelphians take their belongings and head elsewhere, leaving their empty homes and closed-up shops to the British, if they should come. The citizens are not alone. Continental Congress and all its members have evacuated too, heading further south to Baltimore. Against this backdrop, Thomas Paine gets to work. In a span of 10 days, the young author and printer, the man who arrived in America only a few years ago full of hopes to begin a new world in these raw colonies, sets his thoughts to print. He titles it American Crisis. As quickly and widely as Common Sense had spread, so too does this book. It begins to work its magic instantly.
What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. And it would be strange indeed if so celestial an article as freedom should not be highly rated. Thomas Paine.
This was really the low point for the Americans. Washington's reputation was really at stake. And with that reputation, the ability to round up fresh recruits for the army. So it was a really do or die moment in New Jersey.
Paine's words only go so far. Washington must alter his entire approach to the war. He must make some bold move that will restore faith in him and in the durability of the revolution.
He makes up his mind, I've got to shift tactics. He thinks that it isn't necessary to win the war on the battlefield. He just can't lose it. The most important thing is to keep the army together. At the same time, back home, convincing the mothers and wives and children of British soldiers that the cost of this war is too high in deaths, casualties, and for Parliament too, in money.
For the British commander, William Howe, things are not going as planned. The occupation of New Jersey has spread his forces thin. In London, people are asking why the war is not yet won. He needs time to think. Howe has his army dig in for the winter. To guard against rebel attacks, he places Hessian forces at key junctions along the Delaware River, places like Burlington and Trenton. As the cold sets in, the British expect to catch their breath before the next season of fighting begins. Howe's command along the Delaware River falls to Hessian Colonel Johann Rall. Rall has been on constant alert, but now, holed up in Trenton, he is finally beginning to relax. An attack is unlikely as the weather turns grim, and a blizzard blows outside his window. Rall lets his guard down and waits for reinforcements, due any moment. Christmas Eve, New Jersey. Rall's Hessian reinforcements have made an unscheduled stop. Their commander, Colonel von Donop, has decided to spend the night with a fair widow in Mount Holly, just 20 miles from Trenton.
The colonel, who was exceedingly devoted to the fair sex, had found the beautiful young widow of a doctor. He wanted to set up rest quarters in Mount Holly, which, to the misfortune of Colonel Rall, he was permitted to do. Captain Johann Ewald, Hessian officer.
Von Donop's rest will have consequences he cannot imagine, and history will soon record the contribution to the revolution made by the mysterious widow of Mount Holly, whose identity will never be known. Some believe she may have been Betsy Ross, the future creator of the American flag. Scouts soon report to Washington that the Hessian army has left its defenses down. Washington hatches his plan. He will attack. It may well be his last shot, a final effort to revive his reputation, the spirit of his soldiers, and the survival of the revolution. In the last cold days of 1776, Washington prepares his army for what may be the final gambit in the War of Independence. Few believe he can still be victorious. His own soldiers regularly leave the army as their commissions come up. An urgency creeps into everything and everyone.
We are all of the opinion, my dear General, that delay is now equal to a total defeat. Some enterprise must be undertaken in our present circumstances, or we must give up the cause. Joseph Reed, Continental Officer.
By the time Christmas of 1776 approaches, everything has bottomed out. His army has shrunk to only about 5,000 men. He's lost the support of a lot of the people, and all appears to be lost. It truly is a do-or-die situation.
Washington makes a bold decision. He will strike the enemy at Trenton. On Christmas Day, Washington tells his army to prepare. After months of defeat and loss, they understand his purpose. The army will now take the offensive. They will be crossing the Delaware back to New Jersey. Shortly before departing, Washington has American Crisis read aloud.
Let it be told to the future world that in the depth of winter, when nothing but hope and virtue could survive, that the city and the country, alarmed at one common danger, came forth to meet and to repulse it. Time hath found us. Thomas Paine.
It will be a monumental task. Washington's men must ford a near-frozen river in a blizzard and get across fast enough to take the enemy before dawn by surprise. Yet Washington's leadership, his army, and the revolution all ride on the success of this singular mission. Washington himself will lead the soldiers into battle for the first time in the war. The general knows that if they fail, there will be no more chances. At 11 p.m., The boats begin to cross. It will be harder than they had even imagined.
Every school child in America is familiar with the painting of Washington crossing the Delaware, when he's boldly in the front of the boat, standing up, looking heroically towards the eastern shore of the river. It would have been nice, but it didn't happen like that. Nobody stood up that night, wisely so.
It was as severe a night as I ever saw. The frost was sharp, the current difficult to stern, the ice increasing, the wind high, and at 11 it began to snow. It was only with the greatest care and labor that the horses and artillery could be ferried over the river. Captain Thomas Rodney, Continental officer.
It takes most of the night to get the army over. It costs them severely in time. As dawn approaches, this surprise attack on the Hessian forces at Trenton grows nearly impossible. For a moment, Washington considers turning back.
It made me despair of surprising the town, as I well knew we could not reach it before the day was fairly broke. I determined to push on at all events. General George Washington.
5 a.m. The weather worsens and the temperatures drop even further. The soldiers, some with only rags on their feet, begin to succumb to the elements.
I was so benumbed with cold that I wanted to go to sleep. Had I been passed unnoticed, I should have frozen to death without knowing it. But as good luck attended me, Sergeant Madden came and made me walk about. John Greenwood, Continental Fifer.
Not all are so lucky. 2 soldiers lay down in the snow, never to get up again. The others press on. Everything now depends on speed and stealth. It is Washington's new way of waging war.
If he's victorious, fine. If he's defeated, escape as fast as you can and keep your army together. Move fast. Sneak attacks, surprises, midnight escapes, any trick a magician could pull out of his hat. That's how he's got to fight.
Washington had learned his lessons the hard way. Now he will change the rules. In a swift move, he catches the Hessians off guard. It sets off a fierce battle. Hessian soldiers scramble to grab their muskets and meet the enemy. Colonel Rahl wakes up to a battle already underway. He had been expecting something from the rebels, but nothing of this scale. Nor is this the same army the Hessians once met in New York. Now the Continentals fight with fierce spirit. In bloody, chaotic engagements, they hold their own. Trenton is a small battle in numbers, but it is a vicious and closely fought one.
Battle of Trenton is a brutal encounter. The Americans surprise the Hessians, who tumble out of their barracks, grab their muskets, and attempt to defend themselves. The battle lasts less than an hour, though. The Hessians don't have a chance because they're surprised.
Here conceived a scene of war of which I had often conceived, but never saw before. The hurry, the fright, and confusion of the enemy was not unlike that which will be when the last trump shall sound. Colonel Henry Knox, Continental officer.
In the midst of the fighting, the Hessian Colonel Rahl is shot twice. As he dies in bed, the leaderless Hessians lose their will to go on. The path that had taken them from victory in New York ends with defeat at Trenton. 1,000 Hessians are captured or killed out of only 1,500 present. It is Washington's day. Trenton sends a resounding message. The Continental Army is back, and Washington is their undisputed leader. In a year of hardships and loss, he has now learned how to fight this war.
Trenton illustrates the genius of George Washington. Here is an opportunity to strike the enemy where he's weak, when he's weak. This is going to establish the pattern for the rest of the war, in which the Continental Army will always live to fight another day, pick low-hanging fruit, frustrate the British, and continue to provide a thorn in the side of the different British commanders.